It has been a very odd week at DC and Marvel. Comics I knew were going to be good were bad. Comics I knew were going to be bad were good. We've just gotten some of these really strange moments. I talked about one yesterday in Superman Son of Kal-El with the Nightwing crossover. And today in X Deaths of Wolverine #4, I think there's an even worse moment. I don't know. Is this creepy? Is it repugnant? Is it just disgusting? I'm not going to do a review or even generally speak about the overall plot of the issue that I'm going to talk about here, because I'm going to review it in full on Sunday with Doc. But there's a moment in this comic book that's so disgusting, it must be acknowledged for what it is and really called out. I know that they have decided to take Moira in a new direction since Jonathan Hickman took over X-Men. Her place within the X-Men ecosphere and the history of the team has certainly been altered permanently. And there was this odd heel turn in Inferno. She got her arm cut off, and that meant that she didn't like mutants anymore. Obviously, it was Mystique to cut her arm off, but she had just been kidnapped and essentially tortured by the other side too. But apparently, that just meant that she hated mutants, and perhaps I think one of the reasons maybe she didn't want precogs on there was so that Destiny couldn't say, "Hey, listen, I can tell you that she's turned for the other side," or something like that. I remain unconvinced about the heel turn of Moira, but I understand that the character has taken on more significance. But in the past, she has been heavily associated with Sean Cassidy, Banshee, one of the members of the second X-Men team, the second Genesis. He was essentially a founding member of that team and has been heavily associated with Moira ever since the character was introduced very early on in Chris Claremont's run. They've had relations together. They've certainly almost tied the knot. I think they've been engaged. I am not going to lie to you and say Banshee is my favorite X-Men ever. He's not really even in my top 5 or 10, but he is a cool character. I like the cut of his jib. He's a straight shooter, and he certainly had his distinct personality and brought something original and new to the X-Men team, and still does to this day, or at least he did. We'll spoilers on what's about to come up here. Well, fuck it. Let's get right into it. Let's show you the page, and I want to see what you guys think. If you're a fan of Moira or you're a fan of Banshee, I don't think you're going to like this moment, but I do think if you're a fan of X-Men and X-Men history, you probably won't like it either. Moira wanted to sneak onto Krakoa. Obviously, she's gone rogue and she's turned to the other side, but she does need an X gene to pass through the portal. And the way that she came about this and decided to do it is apparently she went and murdered Sean Cassidy, skinned him, and then wore his skin as a suit to go through the portal. I understand that they are trying to get Moira over as this diabolical villain that's done this enormous heel turn and is fighting against the mutants now. But for her to go to Sean Cassidy, one of her oldest friends, someone she's had a deep connection with for a very long time, to kill him and then to skin him and to wear his skin as a suit in order to penetrate the defenses of Krakoa is repugnant. I understand you are trying to get the character over as a villain, but perhaps you've gone too far with this one. People know the history of the characters, and this doesn't feel right. This isn't the first time Ben Percy has come up with this scheme in order to penetrate the defenses of Krakoa. Back in issue #1, this team of assassins ended up penetrating the air defenses of Krakoa, basically by cutting off the skin of a mutant and grafting it onto their own skin, so they would have some X gene on them, and they would be able to penetrate the air defenses of Krakoa. We ended up later finding out that that was Domino. I felt at that moment that it kind of fit in with the tone of the series of X-Force that Ben Percy was writing, and it certainly made you feel for Domino, and it was completely a diabolical thing to do and really made Xeno, the villains that obviously sent the team in, seem like they're this enormous threat and they will do anything. They're torturing people, they're flaying them and grafting the skin of mutants onto their soldiers that they're creating, and it made them seem very formidable and disgusting and all that stuff. And in that sense, I believe this idea works. But when you take that idea and you put it over onto Moira and you have her go skin somebody that she loves, that she would never hurt ever in her life, it feels like you might have gone too far. You missed the boat. Maybe you overshot the target by about 50 million miles. Doesn't this seem strange to you guys? If you're a Moira fan, if you're a Banshee fan, if you're an X-Men fan, do you really believe that in any case, in any circumstance, we've known Moira for a long time, that she would do this to Sean Cassidy? Especially with the history that the characters have together, They've had an on-again, off-again romance for a very long time. Moira has been in very bad straits quite often during this X-Men run, this X-Men time that she's been a part of the series for the last 40 years. And quite often, Sean was essentially her rock, the one that was always there for her. He quit the X-Men to be by her side and to support her through some very, very hard times. He even had to get over her death, obviously. It's comic book, so everybody has to die at least once and be resurrected. And in the case of modern X-Men, you have to die 40 times to be resurrected. So these two characters have been through a ton together. In fact, I believe, wasn't Moira essentially raising his daughter when they were on Muir Island, the virus was happening and all that stuff? I might be getting some of these stories confused, but these are two characters that have a serious, long-lasting, interlocking relationship. They respect each other, they love each other, they care for each other. You can't convince me in any circumstance, unless she's being taken over by the Shadow King, that Moira would ever do this in her right mind, even if she had turned evil and wanted to hurt the mutants. I think she would make an exception for Sean. Are they having some sort of weird competition in the X-Men office to see who can do the most disgusting storyline and actually get it published and through the editorial staff and Jordan White? And obviously it felt like X-Men Green was in the lead, but after this page, this singular page in this story, I think this is even more disgusting than X-Men Green. Maybe not as a whole, but as a moment and as a reflection of the character that Moira is. You could never erase this now. If anyone ever wanted to come back to X-Men and do something with Moira, to perhaps even redeem the character is irredeemable now. She literally murdered someone she loved, skinned them, and walked through a portal. There's no coming back from that. Like, what is the end game for a moment like this? I understand it's probably meant to be very shocking. Like, oh my God, I can't believe she did that. Well, congratulations. That was that kind of moment. But then the realization of what exactly just happened and what the characters mean to each other. And that doesn't even mention the fact that we know who Moira is. She's one of the leading scientists in the world as far as mutants and their genetics. In fact, in House of X Powers of 10, she was able to cure her mutant gene, or at least she thought she had before it was destroyed by Mystique and Destiny. She could likely create some type of synthetic X gene to get through the portal, or another way, just because of the skill set and the knowledge that the character has. So it doesn't make sense that way either. You have this big, gross moment that is less impactful when people think about exactly what you've presented on the page. I don't know what happened to Ben Percy. Obviously, he has done some shocking things and some graphic things that I think fit within the tone of X-Force and Wolverine. But I think this has gone too far. And really, Ben Percy has been trending down very hard for the last year or so on X-Force and Wolverine. I think this is just another example of him trying to perhaps be edgy or do something that's memorable, but it's memorable, in my opinion, for all the wrong reasons, which is pretty much true for all the X-Men comics, essentially across the line right now. There are a couple of standouts, a few anomalies here or there, but for the most part, I just find the X-Men terrible right now, and I think a lot of people feel the same way. If you're asking yourself, Wes, how did we get here? Just so happens I talked about this not that long ago. Jordan White, the group editor for X-Men, actually sat down and talked about his editorial process. We broke it down, and believe me, it all starts with him. When you hear what he has to say about what he puts into his editorial services, you'll see why X-Men have sunk this low.